Thank you, John. Welcome, everybody. This is exciting. We have this is our third holiday show and tell on Zoom. Yeah, 2020, 2021, 2022. It's just, I'm so glad that people from all over can join us. And what you might want to do for this, just a few brief Zoom tips. Up in the top right corner, I would leave it in speaker mode so that you can automatically see the person who is speaking, because people will be sharing cameras and you are going to want to get a closer look. That means that everybody needs to stay muted, because if you sneeze, your image is going to pop up on the screen. So please stay muted until it's time for questions or it's your turn to present. We have, let's see, we have 8 people. I thought there were 9, but that field was blank. So for our show and tell, we're going to try and stick to 10 minutes max per person. And I'll get started shortly, but I just wanted to thank everyone for all the suggestions for programming that are coming my way. I am hearing from people with some great ideas. And in fact, I just got an email from Gary Van Zant at MIT, John, who is interested in presenting for us, hopefully in February. So that might be fantastic, about the museum. He's the curator. Okay.
Dana, can I ask a favor?
Yeah.
I'm still sorting out stuff here
Sure.
at mine. Can you put me in like the 5th or 6th position, please? I should be ready by then.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No problem. I have holiday lighting, but it's not very clear, so I'm going to leave it like that. The first member who signed up rather, for show and tell is Ben. And Ben, are you there? Are you ready?
Hello, I am ready. We good to go, Dana?
Go ahead. Thank you.
Awesome. So first of all, happy holidays to everyone. Thanks to Dana for putting this on, to all the board for their continued support, and most importantly, all the members. This is a member-driven organization, and that's really what makes it special. And so forgive me, I'm battling a little bit of a chest cold, but I guess that's part of the benefit of Zoom. Nobody here is going to get sick from me, so that's good. So one of my real interests in photography has been, I am a hobbyist photographer, and I like to take photos mainly of my family. And so when I first started, the first digital camera I got was a Canon EOS DSLR. So it's got the mirror just like the old film cameras. It flips up and you take a picture and it shows up on a memory card, and you can race home, put it on your computer, upload it to Facebook, and you're off and running. I started getting more and more into mirrorless cameras. So the difference between a DSLR and a mirrorless camera is, with a mirrorless digital camera, there's no flipping mirror. It's all electronic viewfinder, and they're a lot more compact. And they actually, what I found out was they're really great for adapting old lenses. So as I started in my camera journey, I started coming across a lot of old vintage lenses and learning that I could adapt them to my mirrorless camera and I could take photos. So the reason that vintage lenses are so desirable compared to modern day mirror, like one that would actually come in the box on a mirrorless camera, are a few different reasons. One, they have old lenses have manual focus control, they have manual aperture control, and they have really high quality optics, no plastic optics or anything in there. A lot of times not even plastic bodies. It's really high quality lenses. So I wanted to kind of give an example of the way it works so that anyone who has, an old film camera and wants to get more into digital photography, might be interested in sort of how this works. So here's an example of a Canon F1 film camera. So basically, oh, this one has like all the pro locks and everything like that. Let me just leave it alone. But it's a film camera. You can believe that. Everyone knows the old F1. And so basically what I can do is take this lens right off, and there's no electronic contacts or anything like that. And then I've got my mirrorless camera over here, and I've already got another Canon FD lens on there, but I'll take that one off. And this is what the adapter looks like. So it's basically this extra piece here. So it comes off. It looks a lot like an extender or a multiplier. And basically what it does is it takes the lens. You can put the lens onto the adapter. And then this, the tail end now has become for my Sony mirrorless camera. So here's the mirrorless camera. And I can just put that on like this and lock it in, and I'm good to go. So one of the things I always like about photography, I was never, a newspaper photographer or anything like that where you just had to point and get your shot. I always liked composition and being able to control the focal point, being able to control the manual aperture, and having it be more of an art. And I feel like the manual lenses, they really allow you to do that. But you can take it a step further. The characteristics that all these different lenses have are truly remarkable. So the Canon FD line is the one that I'm kind of focusing on here today. Canon FD has a broad range of lenses that have started and evolved over time. But then you also have the Takumar lenses that were famous from the Pentax cameras. You have this Contax Yashica Zeiss lenses are extremely popular. You have the Minolta MD interchangeable lenses, hugely popular. With the M42 screw mount adapter, you have an endless range of brands that go with that, starting with the Takumar being the M42 as well. So what I would encourage people to do is if they are considering getting into digital photography, don't just settle on the lenses that come in the box. I would encourage you to investigate looking at what adapters are available for your model. So if you got a Fuji FX mirrorless camera, that's really popular. Fuji makes a really great mirrorless camera. It's easy to use. Olympus makes some really nice cameras. Sony makes some really nice mirrorless cameras, as well as Canon and Nikon. My recommendation, if you're coming from a photography background and you're familiar with the concept of a full frame camera versus a crop sensor camera, would be I would suggest that you look into Sony. Sony has really affordable full frame mirrorless cameras that you can mount up with these old classic lenses, and you'll be on your way and shooting in no time. So after this, if anybody has any questions about mirrorless cameras or about adapting vintage lenses, I hope you'll reach out to me and ask me some questions. I'll steer you in the right direction. There's also a ton of communities on Facebook that are really, really popular on this subject. I'd encourage you to get involved there. And last but not least, don't forget to go to PHSNE Photographica and check out the table, because that's where I actually got this particular lens. So thank you to whoever donated it and to the PHSNE organization for, putting that for sale. So happy shooting, everyone.
Thanks, Ben. That was great. If you want to stick your email address in the chat in case anyone has questions, that would be awesome. And I have an A1, so I have some of those lenses. Let's see. Vladimir, are you able to share yet? Reich is going to go a little bit later.
Yes. Yes.
Great.
Hello, everybody.
Take it away.
All right. So today my topic would be Lumiere cameras, and it's gonna start with a little bit of history of that company. So let us begin, and I would start with this Uh, if you can see my screen. Yes, very good. So once upon a time, long time ago, in October 1861 in Paris, small town in France, two people got married, and the family name was Lumiere. The family had several kids, several children, 5 children, and we will not be talking about everybody who was born, but we'll talk about only 2 sons, because those 2 sons continuated the father's business, and they made that business very successful. Over here, the bottom of this slide, you can see the transformation from the beginning of the company and until nowadays. Well, unfortunately, Lumiere cameras are not available nowadays, the new ones, but instead we have Lumix, which is connected to that Lumiere somehow. I don't remember how. So this is a short, very short list of what they were doing. Please understand and remember that the 2 sons, Auguste and Louis Lumiere, are credited with inventing movie business, cinematography. This is how they created the big screen projection. There was the unit that was the source of the light, and another unit was to move the film in certain manner. But in between doing cinematography business, they created cameras, and that in between lasted until 1961. They created many interesting cameras, including, this is their promotion for cinematography. Actually, the name Lumiere is famous for cinema. And they created this wonderful camera, LG. There are many of these cameras, LG. They produced this camera from 1937 to 1960. And this is the one that I bought at the Photographica, the last Photographica, right? But unfortunately, this camera was not in working condition. It was the rear door, rear wall actually was bent, so it did not match the body, and the viewfinder was almost separated from the body. But surprisingly, this little camera has parallax, the parallax compensation jig. Let me show it to you. I have it with me, and I will try to switch my cameras. So can you share? No,
you just go.
here.
Just change the camera.
Yes.
Yeah.
Video 20. Okay. All right. Very good. So this is the camera, and this is the little parallax. You can probably see it like this, but right? Like this. Here, you move this and yeah. You see tiny movement of the viewfinder. See? For closer shots. And the lens is going in and out, and it works. You can probably hear the noise from the shutter, and this is how it looks from the inside. Now I can open it and then close it again. So this is the film width, right? It's a special Lumiere film. I think 127 will fit here, but I'm not sure. And here in the back, you see the window to view, which is covering, has the door, right? So, and this is how it goes back. Now it's very tight, so you don't need the light ceilings or light seals or anything else, right? So it closes like this, and it closes like this, and here is the little camera, and it's very pleasant to have it on the hand. Very small, right? Another one.
Vlad, you'll
Another
have to share screen again. I turned it off so we can see the camera better.
Sorry?
You'll have to hit share screen one more time.
But you're not now.
Sorry, I turned it off when you were showing the camera so we could get a good look at it.
But I'm going to show another camera.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay. All right, so this is another camera, and this is a little bit bigger camera, taking 6x9, making 6x9 shots, and but it's not 120, it's a 620 film. What's the difference? The difference is the spool, because this spool is thinner, and the film of the same width is longer. So we have more film on this spool than in regular cameras. And this is the information about this camera. Lumiere. Lumiere, Super Lumichrome, Ultipen. Ultipen is, but other than that, is it's a regular 6x9 camera with the same looking lens and the shutter. The shortest speed is 1/50th over here, right? The same is for this camera. This has 1/50th as well. So now, Ben, if you want to switch, you can switch. There, share. There. Okay. All right. So this is the camera, and it was made, according to this classification, was made in 1944. So it's going to have anniversary very soon, in a couple of years. So another camera that I just showed was Ludax, and Ludax was available with 2 lenses with Spectre and Fidor. I have it with the Fidor 6.3. It's not as fast as the other one, but it's a very good camera, and it's in working condition. You can click it and it works. Before this Photographica, I did not know a lot about this company, and thank for the Photographica, now I am interested in those cameras. So next time I will see a camera that doesn't work and has name Lumiere on it, I will definitely get it. All right, so that's about it. I hope I made 10 minutes. That's it. Thank you.
That was perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, Vlad. That was really cool. And if you stop sharing your screen now, we'll go back to our members' shares. So let's see. Reich, are you still working on? Let's Bill, are you ready? Bill Rosenthal?
Yes, I.
Sure.
Great.
Let me just add regarding the Lumiere brothers and their introduction of cinema photography. They also are credited with developing the first commercially available color photography, the autochrome. And for those who may not be familiar with the autochrome, basically what it was, they took potato granules, starch granules, dyed them the primary colors or secondary colors, laid them on glass, used charcoal to fill in the space between the granules, put the emulsion on the back, and then sandwiched another piece of glass. When it was inserted into the camera, unlike most cameras where the emulsion side faces the back of the lens, the autochrome was put in reverse so that the light passed through the granules before it hit the emulsion. When you look at an autochrome, and I have some in my collection, they are much like Seurat, who was an impressionist painter who did pointillism. They're little dots. They're very charming images. I have about 4 things I'd like to share from my collection. And in November, as was mentioned earlier, we did the presentation from the Brookline Museum on the children's photography that was primarily developed with penny photographs. Jack showed a political pin from the Abraham Lincoln period. I'd like to share one. I see if this is up there. You can see it. I'm looking at my small image. I'm not getting the big image on my screen. Hopefully you can
Just need to go up a little higher, Bill.
higher.
Yep, just an inch. A little more. A little higher. Little higher. All right, we have it. Oh, and then let's see. If you move over to your left, tilt it. Move it to your left, just a little less than that. Smaller adjustment. Go back the other way.
The other way.
Back a little bit more. Okay, and up just a hair. Okay, hair more. And
Oh, I
that's
see.
good.
There it is. All right.
Yeah.
This is a tin type. It's a political pin of a man named John Bell. Let me see if I can get it in there again. Of John Bell, who is a Secretary of War under William Harrison, but also was a Speaker of the House, and he ran for president in 1860 from a party called the Constitutional Union Party. I just wanted to share that. Jack showed a few pieces. I don't have any Daguerrean cameras in my collection, but having said that, I do. This is a camera that was made by a fellow named Jerry Smith. It's a 1/3 scale model of a Giraud Daguerrean camera. There were very few of these made. Jerry did make 2 plate holders, but they were very difficult to make, so he only made 2 of them. You may notice that there's a mirror on the back, much like the original Giraud, and that, of course, was to right side up the image when you looked at it. And of course, he has the 0 marking on the side. Many of you may be familiar with the Ansco Agfa Ready Set camera. The Ready Set cameras, of course, came in color in ostrich skin and the silver fox, but there's a very rare version called the Menorcan. If you get onto the internet, you'll see that there's a blue Menorcan. This is a picture of one. Bill Martyr, in his book on Anthony, mentions the blue version. McCune has no reference in his price guide. So it's very unusual. However, the only blue one is mentioned. I have one that's red. And you'll notice the design, the pattern on the skin, very different. The other thing I wanted to share with you, well, 2 things. One, when I display my my Jerry Smith camera, I have next to it some trade cards that I've collected over the years, which picture de guerre. Before I collected cameras, I was a tin toy collector. And oftentimes it said that the toy is less interesting than the box that it came in. But that can also be said for cameras. This is a camera from APM, Amalgamated Camera Manufacturer in England. Now I'm going to hold it in close because you can see the little kids walking into the back of the box without any cameras and coming out the front holding cameras. Now back up so you can get a feel for the box. And also on the top of the box is another wonderful illustration. I bought this strictly for the box because I thought it was so wonderful. I want to thank everybody for putting this together. I think this is a wonderful thing. This is my 3rd year of doing this with you, and I think it's just a marvelous thing for the organization. My only regret is that I don't live in New England where I could come to the live meetings and be with all of you and meet you personally. But I thank you for putting this together. Thank you again. Have a wonderful holiday.
You too, Bill. Thank you. When was that, the camera, the box that you exhibited, when was that made?
Amalgamated camera manufacturers out of England, 1921. So I would say this is probably more from the 30s to 40s. I don't have an exact date on this model. But I would guess it's probably from the 30s to 40s at the most.
Great. It's a terrific box. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was great. Thanks, Bill. Ken, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Take it away.
Great. Thanks, everybody. I'm very new to PHSNE, having done a presentation last month, and I know much less about cameras and frankly about taking pictures. If I have good photos, they're usually an accident. But I do have my father's collection of cameras. He was into photography as a young man, and I have his cameras mostly, I think, from the 40s and 50s. Both still cameras and movie cameras that I have on display in my living room. And I don't know much about them, but I'm sure I could learn a lot from folks here. But as a historian, my interest in my presentation is more on what we can learn from looking at photographs, old photographs and even not so old photographs. And the examples I'm going to show are how just kind of very small details in photographs can lead to more information about the photograph, and sometimes to stories that are real rabbit holes. And I like nothing more than going down a rabbit hole. So I'm going to share my screen. So At the Brookline Historical Society, we have probably about 1,100 photos on our site. About 700 are our own photos, and others are photos at other organizations of Brookline, where we provide thumbnails and links to their full and usually zoomable images and provide a lot more information about what they are. So I'm going to give you a few examples of some photos and how small details fill in the picture of various stories. This is a picture of a stationery store that was in Brookline for about 50 years called Payne Stationery. And it's a rare interior picture of Brookline stores. I'm very interested in the history of retail in Brookline. And this is a great picture of a store that was a fixture in town for a long time. And when we zoomed in on it, I could see the 1957 World Almanac, but couldn't be sure because almanacs often come out a little bit before the year comes out. But I could see a copy of the New York Times in the corner. If I go back up, you can see it's in the lower left corner. And it was hard for me to make out when I zoomed in what the headline said, but I could read the words Capital Today and Crisis. And I have access to a newspaper database, so I went in to search for those words in the title in 1957, the New York Times, and came up with Eisenhower to fly to Capitol today on Mideast crisis, brought up an image of it. There it is. And the word that I couldn't see at the very top is Eisenhower, and I was able to identify that it was February 19th, 1957. Not particularly important to know the date, but the year was important. This picture is one that was given to us by somebody at another organization who somebody donated it to them, and they sent it to us. It was a picture of a Woolworths in Brookline, one of two Woolworths that were in Brookline for a very long time, and it became one of my favorite photos. In part because when you zoom in on it, there's one man and a bunch of women working in this Woolworths in Brookline Village. And, you know, this may be projection on my part, but several of these women they're showing some attitude there. They don't look too happy about having their picture taken. So why are you making us pose for this? Just the kind of the slumped shoulder on this one and this one, and the look over here. I just love the look about it. But I wanted to find out a little bit more about when this picture was taken. And at the top of the picture, there was something that said FW Woolworths Company Spring Sale, April 20th to April 25th. So a 6-day sale. And I thought, why 6 days? Well, Massachusetts had blue laws. Stores weren't open on Sundays. So I went and looked at what years was April 19th and April 26th Sunday. And I found 1914. I think the next one was 1926. I knew it wasn't any earlier than 1914 because the store opened in 1911. In 1926, just judging by the clothing, I was pretty sure I could date it to that April of 1914. But something wasn't right, because here's the picture, and on the right is the building, and you can see skylights in the store, but it's a 2-story building. How could there be skylights in a 2-story building? And in fact, the article in the local paper from 1911 about the store, actually the building being built, saying it was a 1-story building. The new building will contain 2 stores. One will be occupied by Woolworth 5 and 10 cent store. So how could that be? How could there be skylights in a 2-story building? I went down to town hall, looked at building records, and found that the 2nd story was added later. So mystery solved for one of my favorite photographs. This is a picture that I didn't need to do any detective work to find out the date, because it actually has the date and the name of the photographer in the lower left corner. It says taken February 5th, 1927 by H.A. Varney. This is Green Street, corner for Harvard Street and Coolidge Corner. The picture on the lower right is what it looks like today, and Otto's Pizza, where the pastry shop is on the left in the older picture. And Henry Varney was the town engineer who photographed streets all over town, usually without people in them. He wanted to get capturing the streets, and they're a great collection of photos. But here are these 2 boys with a wagon, and when we zoomed in on the wagon, great faces on the boys, and it looks like they're delivering a magazine is what it looked like. You can see it under the arm and more of them in the Peerless wagon below. And it looked like, all we could see of the top of it, it looked like a letter L. So we started looking what magazines were starting with the letter L, and we thought it might be an I afterwards, were around in 1927. We found there was Life magazine, which was very different from the Life magazine that we all know. Henry Luce of Time Life bought the old magazine and turned it into what became Life. And there was another magazine called Liberty. So we started looking for copies of the covers of those magazines from those years. And fortunately, somebody had collected all the covers of Liberty magazine throughout its many-year run. And we found this cover from February 5th, 1927. You can see it's the actual magazine under the boy's arm that's on the picture. We'd love to find out who those boys are. Have not been able to identify that, but we did find that Liberty magazine had a contest for what they called Liberty Boy Salesmen. That if they delivered enough magazines, they could get prizes, including a little pin. I actually found some announcements of winners of the pins. Didn't find any in Brookline. I was hoping I would, and maybe would be able to identify who those boys were. And maybe someday it'll turn up, and we'll find out who they were. But another way, again, a way that kind of led to a story about this magazine, about this contest, from a small detail of one photograph. It's not only good quality photographs that can lead to stories. This is an image that appeared in an advertisement in the Brookline Chronicle in 1933 for a restaurant in Coolidge Corner called the Café de Paris. This image is from the microfilm of the newspaper. It's not a good image at all. I knew the location, 299 Harvard Street, has been a series of restaurants to this day. 1933 was the first restaurant in that spot. I was able to light it up a little bit, and I really liked the design, very different from what it looks like today, sort of an Art Deco or maybe Art Moderne storefront that is just beautiful. Again, this is just from a newspaper advertisement on microfilm, but I posted something about this in my blog, and I got a comment from somebody who said, what's that round object on the wall on the right? It's still there today. And you can see it over on the far right above the hood of the car is just a round object on the wall. So I went over to where the storefront is today. Back in the 50s to the 70s, it was a very well-known Brookline delicatessen called Jack and Marion's. And there's a picture of it there, and you can see the round object on the wall, and you can see it on a picture a couple of years ago when I took this photo, where it's now the Gen Suen Japanese tea house, and there's that round object. So I went back, and I've literally walked by this thousands of times in the 25 years I've lived in Brookline and never noticed this. And I went there and I took a picture of it close up, and it says Rockwood Sprinkler Alarm Company, Worcester, Mass. So it's a sprinkler alarm with these little holes in it that no doubt were a kind of a design feature, but that also helps spread the sound. There are lots of sprinkler alarms all over the place. They're very common, but modern ones are usually solid, usually red, sometimes with the light, not nearly as interesting as this one that I was looking at. And then I started noticing a lot more of them in Brookline and outside of Brookline. The top row, these are all in Brookline. And I just have found dozens of them in Brookline, different designs, different companies. The ones on the bottom are from elsewhere in Boston and other places. The one that's third from the right on the bottom is actually at Fenway Park. And that's the only one I've seen in that design. It's a particularly nice design. My wife and I were even watching a movie at home, a movie with called Patterson. And my wife stopped the video because I saw a fire alarm on the wall in the movie. So I noticed, and I've noticed them as I've traveled to visit my daughter in California and other places I've been, all over the place. So the Rockwood Sprinkler Alarm Company, which is the company on the name of the one that first got me started on this, went out of business, but their factory still exists in Worcester. It's called the Sprinkler Factory. It's an artist studio on the second floor with kind of offices downstairs. And so my wife and I went out there, and there's me pictured in front of the place, one of their alarms with a very nice design on the wall of the building, and just all starting from this bad photo on microfilm in the Brookline newspapers. So what do I do with all this stuff? And I actually put together a website on cast iron sprinkler alarms, an industrial archaeology virtual collection, all photographs of ones that I've seen and taken, and have put together information on where they are, what the companies were, pictures of the buildings, showing them on maps. And I continue to find more, and occasionally we'll add new ones to the website, which is listed at the bottom there, bit.ly/sprinkler-alarms, and a lot of fun. All that started with just a photograph, a bad photograph from an advertisement in a newspaper that I posted that somebody asked a question about, and down the rabbit hole I went, and that's what photographs can do. Again, lots of photographs on our website, many of them with stories attached at the Brookline Historical Society. So thank you.
Thank you, Ken. That was great. I love the term industrial archaeology. Love it. And the design is really cool. All those different designs. I've never noticed one of those before, and now I will know what they are.
Once you see them, you can't stop seeing them.
Thank you so much. Happy holidays. How about we go to Dan and then Reich, if Reich is ready afterwards. Dan, are you all set?
I should probably turn my mute off. There we go, and share my screen with any luck. Let's see, did we have luck? Can people see that? Yeah, working great. Well, thank you, everybody. It's so fun to get to know new people. I am a fairly new collector, but ravenous. I have a belief. Here's another picture of my my collection. I have a belief that, much like Jay Leno, except my advance isn't working. Why is that? I believe these cameras should be used. So I thought I'd, for my show and tell, share some of my journey as I've been taking these cameras, and I have a goal of shooting at least one roll with all of them. And I've been working through it, and thought I'd take this opportunity to show some of them off. I'll be doing this in what I'll call quasi-historical order. And please be gentle if I get any of my dates and details wrong. This is a Fujica half. This is not quite in the order I promised. This model camera belonged to my dad. He took it to Vietnam and came back with a boatload of slides. He liked it because it was a half frame, so he only had to take a few rolls of film with him. He gave that to me in high school, and this is a photo I took in high school in a photography course. It's the only photo that exists from that time frame. It must have been a test exposure because there's a little smudge at the top. I found an old roll of film, and so the quality of these are not great, but took it around town and had an opportunity to take an old camera and shoot some frames. I then picked up a Brownie Model 2, Brownie number 2 Model F. The Brownie was made, I think, from 1901 all the way into the 1930s. This is one of the later ones. And much to my joy, it does a pretty nice job. I was truly amazed at how well these came out, given how simple the camera was. This is, I guess I didn't mention, I'm from Ipswich, so this is all around Ipswich. This was at a vintage car race day. So everyone was dressed up in vintage clothing, and it felt appropriate to bring a vintage camera. That's an inadvertent double exposure. I hadn't quite gotten the rhythm of winding every time I shot. This is actually the oldest camera in my collection. This is a folding Brownie. It's from 1904 to 1907. As you can tell, I have a light leak issue, which I was just learning about. Was able to get a few exposures and was able to touch them up, but still not a bad experience. And that's me. I was because I was at a vintage car race, a vintage event with a vintage camera. I wound up in the newspaper. This is a Kodak vest pocket autographic. This was the soldier's camera. If you see a picture from World War I, it was probably taken with this camera. I took it around, and again, for 110, 120-year-old camera, not bad. As you can tell, this one also has a light leak issue. I'm just learning how to do those repairs, and so all of these are in, as they say, the shop. So skipping on ahead, this is a Voigtlander Bessa. It was made from 1929 to about 1956. This particular model is from about 1947. And as you can tell, it's got aperture controls, focus. It's got shutter speed controls. It's and it is actually quite a capable camera. This is also from a, I like to go to vintage events and bring vintage cameras. This one does have a light leak, and I haven't determined whether or not the light leak is from the window for the to see the frame numbers. But still, not a bad result. This is outside my backyard. That's a Crane Beach. And just to be clear and intellectually honest, I do touch these photos up in Lightroom. This is how the previous shot came out of the camera initially. I didn't like the bright spot at the edge. I went and cropped it out, fixed some colors, but I also felt that the minivan in the background was taking away from the actual mood, so I got rid of it. I hope people don't think less of me. This is the camera that I'm currently shooting. I don't have anything to show from it. This is a Retina Model 118 made in about 1935. I desperately wanted this because this is a camera that Sir Edmund Hillary took to the top of Mount Everest and took this photograph with. So in that spirit, I've loaded it with a roll of expired slide film, and we'll see what happens. Although I'm not heading to Everest anytime soon. My next is an Argus 3 that was made in the late 30s all the way to the mid 60s, and I have to tell you, it's way more fun to shoot than I thought it was going to be, and was very impressed with the results. It's a very simple camera to operate, but the contrast on the lens is very, very nice. These are, this is basically as simple a camera as you can imagine. It is a rangefinder, so I can get to focus reasonable, except for that one. You'll see this brig show up a lot. I tend to, there's a little view in Ipswich, and I try to take all my old cameras and take the same shot and then line them up and compare how each camera performed. Next is an Icoflex from Zeiss Icon. It's made from 1939 to 1951. This is a very late model. I think it's from the 1940s. This is my first TLR, so it took me a little while to kind of get used to using it. But still, not terrible. I think the lens is a little cloudy, so this one, you don't get quite as much contrast. This is the dam at in Ipswich, and again the bridge overlook. This was Memorial Day. So this is the jewel in my crown. This is a Nikon S, and I won't bother with the history lesson, but I was desperately seeking one, but didn't want to spend the kind of money that these things tend to fetch. Found someone whose father was a newspaper photographer and was simply getting rid of his collection. So I got this and had an opportunity to just shoot a roll with it. This was in the very first place I took it was actually a concert of the daughter of a friend of mine. Again, what's impressed me is just the quality of the lens and how sharp and how contrasty these are. And I didn't have to do much fix up after after things were developed. Again, the bridge. You could see why Nikon had the reputation it did in the 1950s for lenses. That's a Citroen 2CV that runs around our town. So this is another TLR that I picked up fairly recently. This was made between 1952 and 1956. It came with a roll of film in it of unknown origin. So I didn't know if it was black and white. I didn't know if it was, what the ISO was. So I just took some guesses. Again, this is that same view at Crane, at Crane Beach, Crane Estate. And so again, going, my historical order. This is a Nikon F. 1959 to I think 1973. This is what's called a Nikon Apollo. It was the last couple of years just before they discontinued it. I also have another one from the mid 60s that I Frankenstein together out of a prism that I found in a body, and all the lenses work. Again, the bridge, but look how sharp that is. This is a neighbor of mine, and I blew this up to an 11 by 14 and gave it to him as a gift. And it enlarged just spectacularly. Even though the negative went to a digital form, I then was able to print it out enlarged. Neighbor's dog. I posted one of these up, and someone was collecting photographs for her husband, and so wanted a large version of it. And it's amazing how well these enlarge. So going forward in time, but backward in the technology, I have a neighbor who had a box full of cameras, and one of them was the original Instamatic from like 1963. And as we were going through his box of cameras, it turns out there was a roll of film in it. So I said, tell you what, let me have the box of cameras and I'll develop the roll. And here we are. These photos, we think, were sitting in the camera for 40 years. They did have to get fixed up after I had them developed. but this is probably from the mid 70s or maybe early 70s. And while this one didn't come out well, I bring this to show him, and the woman starts tearing up. This photo was from their 10th wedding anniversary in like 1972, and has been literally sitting in the camera all those years. Had another neighbor who was liquidating his cameras. He had a this was given to him as either a high school or college graduation present in 1967. I decided to take it and take pictures of the neighborhood and present it to him before he moves to California. And so, not bad for again for a as you can tell, I tend to shoot black and white, but decided color for this series. I think this is a nice photograph, through that, from that era camera. So I got in barter an SX70, and I don't know how many people remember the SX70. Kind of the early to mid 1970s. This version has the little sonar rangefinder. So when you press it halfway down, a little chirp goes out, and then it focuses it. And then I found a vintage era flash, and just the other night, it works. This is a good old Pentax. This was another friend of mine. He purchased this camera when he was going to go to Alaska in the late 70s. Again, a vintage car show. This is our orchestra. Here in Ipswich, see the orchestra on the hill. My dog. So we're now up to the mid to late 70s. This is a Canon AE1. What people don't realize is how influential and how much consumer photography changed because of this one. That top that looks like metal is not metal, it's plastic, but they put little metal filings in the plastic so it would feel cool to the touch. Professional photographers poo-pooed it because it had all this electronics and could help you select your shutter speed. I found it a lot of fun to shoot.
Dan, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Actually, it's from John, who was wondering, going back to the Nikon F, how did you get the meter to work properly? And are we doing all of the cameras that were on the table?
No, we are not. We're almost at the end. It is a goal of mine to get through them all, but no, we're not. I did find a meter. That meter, because the camera is so new, does work. Many of the cameras that do have meters don't work, and I end up having to old school them. For example, that Micromat, the meter doesn't work, so I had to light meter it and do it old school. So now this is a Nikon FE. We're now into the late 70s, early 80s. This was a lot of fun to shoot, I have to say. This is a store in Salem. Again, my dog, my desk. Dog. He's in Gloucester. This one I've actually sold 3 times. It's a shop window in Salem, if you look closely, you see the reflections of the buildings behind. And if you look closely again, you see me taking the picture. Kind of off to the right there. And my dogs. Next one is an ME Super, again, late 70s, early 80s. I took this one to California. This is the original Tower Records in Sacramento. My son and fiance. This is perhaps the most expensive camera in its time that I own, the Nikon F3. It was made from about 1980 to 2000. This one I dated to 1983. But it's just a great camera. And if I'm going too fast or too slow, let me know. Again, the bridge. This was taken with a vintage 400mm lens. So this camera, I actually bought in 1985 and was my camera that I used for 20 years. If you notice, it has the double X in the logo. That means it was one of the first ones made before Exxon sued them to have the logo changed. This was from a set of negatives that I found that I had rescanned from a trip to Provincetown. And I was able to dust the camera up, clean it up, and about a year ago, how to roll with it. My dogs again. Which brings us to, as part of my collection, I've been trying to find cameras that are important. This is a Nikon DH1, which is the next, just after the D1. It is the kind of Nikon's first professional grade digital camera. Only a 2.7 megapixel sensor. Picked it up for $20. Managed to get a battery in it. Actually, no battery, but I was able to tether it, and completely amazed at the quality. Dog again. And that's what I've gotten so far. Thank you.
It's a great collection. We really appreciate you sharing it with us. Reich, would you like to step up?
I'm stepping up. So the Surrealists Among Us, these are from my personal collection of photographs, going in chronological order: Clarence, John Laughlin, Dwayne Michaels, and Jerry Yulesman, all of whom I had this secret admiration for, the guys who take on surrealist photography. I want to do a quick surrealist recap. The horrors of World War I was, ended up creating all kinds of disruptions in Europe during the 1920s, not the least of which was the artists who were trying to find a new way to express themselves. Dada became sort of not Dada, and Andre Breton sort of more or less created a manifesto about surrealism, the super real, and it was based on having art that was created out of the subconscious, out of dreams, and often was had a lot of emotional content. A lot of it was erotic, and the Breton went on until the I think the 60s before he passed away as the leader, or at least the instigator, for the Surrealist movement. There were all kinds of artists who were either directly aligned with the Surrealist movement in France, which is where it began, and the names that you've seen here are familiar: Arp and Cocteau and Gerico and all sorts of other people. Man Ray, in particular, was a celebrated surrealist. There were photographers in Europe who were especially involved in the surrealist movement. Hans Belmar was a photographer who created his own dolls, which were, frankly, they're still sort of upsetting to look at them because some of them were cut in half, and it was a very weird thing that he did. Versailles, of course, was the photographer of the night in Paris. Bill Brandt in England. Philippe Halsman in France, and then after and he escaped from the war and came to the U.S. André Kertész, with his distortions, was a leading surrealist in the late 20s into the 30s, and both Dora Maar, who was the mistress of Pablo Picasso, and Lee Miller were both aligned with the surrealist movement. At the Second World War, it was a great diaspora of artists going anywhere but staying in, other than staying in Europe. So in the US, however, they were people, I've tried to track down exactly how surrealism in this country, the United States, got underway. And as near as I can tell, everybody did their own thing. There was no manifesto. There were no political meetings. There was no, charge for political this or economic that. It was the surrealist photographers, American photographers, who wanted to try some kind of different image-making strategy, and that included working through a variety of different things, rather than these aesthetic manifestos and the debates around in the U.S. As near as I can tell, and somebody should, point me right out if I'm wrong, they were more or less on their own. Both during and after the World War II era, surrealist photographers really, I think, the way I visualize it is that they were either exploring an historic America or trying to explain a new America. The three examples of photographers are Clarence John Laughlin, Dwayne Michaels, and Jerry Ullsman. Alas, Jerry Ullsman died in April of this year, which is a great loss. He was an amazing photographer. Dwayne Michaels celebrates his 90th birthday this year, and I think he's already 90. And Laughlin had a long career himself. So we're going to take Laughlin first. He was born in Lake Charles, Louisiana. His work and life was mostly spent around New Orleans, in Louisiana, and up and down the South. As it says here, where he was a freelancer at 25, he became an architectural photographer and later worked for Vogue magazine. Anecdote, he quit Vogue because he was tired of listening to Edward Steichen. And he also worked on the US government for various projects. This would be during the 30s. So likely he was working with either the Farm Security Administration or some of the other agencies that were documenting the South and poverty during the Great Depression. By the time in the late 30s, he kind of went on his own and decided he was just going to work on personal projects. And the result of that was a photo book called Ghosts Along the Mississippi, The Magic of the Old Houses of Louisiana, which was first published in 1948. It's interesting to note that his work spanned many, many, many years, thousands, tens of thousands of photographs. And I'm not sure where his archive went, to be honest. And one of the things that was most interesting to me about this was his own belief that he would, when he was doing his own project work, he would be taking all kinds of photographs. He would put models, pets, toys, and all sorts of stuff. And so his surrealism was not focused on one particular style, but rather a whole range of styles, with adding his own imagination to that kind of work. This is the image that I acquired. It's one of his better known, perhaps best known image. It's called The Enigma, 1941. I'm not sure, if people read the text, I won't bother to read it if people can see it on screen, on your screens. But his captions, I think this was probably excerpted from his book, had long captions. There's a label on the back of the print that I purchased that gives this whole text from him. The most important thing to me is why the name Enigma. And here the clouds hang like a question mark. That's the key to this image, over the mystery of the ruins. And this image has forever haunted me. I saw it when I was in my early 20s. And when I had an opportunity to buy it, I did, because I've always marveled at what Clarence John Laughlin did. Another photographer like him, also now passed, is Kentucky's Ralph Eugene Meatyard, who also worked in a kind of strange, dreamlike and surreal, certainly, format. So the next one is my favorite photographer, and one of the, apart from one other, whose work gratefully influenced me as a photographer when I'm in my late teens and early 20s, back in the 70s. Interestingly enough, Michaels and Andy Warhol knew each other growing up in McKeesport, Pennsylvania. He added all kinds of art and college education, and getting a BA from Denver. After the Army, he went on to study at Parsons and left Parsons, then traveled to Russia. And it was then that he discovered an interest in photography. He went off in the mid-60s to visit the Belgian painter René Magritte, whose work, as it says here, and he admired. There's a small, short book of photographs, A Visit with Magritte by Duane Michaels, which was published in 1981. And if you're not familiar with Mike Mandel's photographer trading cards, you really should look them up, because some of them are hysterical. Many of them are somewhat unknown, but some of them are definitely not. Minor White is the coach, by the way, for the trading card business amongst photographs when Mandel did this in the mid 70s. I think I'll just go to it. I'm going to read this one. What engaged me in Magritte's work was its ability to perplex. In his world, I could not be sure of anything. Giant roses filled entire rooms. The moon lit up a starry sky at midday, and nightgowns could display real women's breasts. In his paintings, he presented such amusing but serious ideas. I was freed from just looking. What I love about this image was the caption, handwritten caption underneath, which is a Dwayne Michaels sort of trademark, it says, Rene Magritte sleeping. And the question is, what is he dreaming of? And finally, only just this year, Jerry Yulsman is, I think, well known to everybody. Without going into a long list, he graduated from ITT, I believe, Illinois Tech, and came south to teach in Gainesville and never left. He was there for almost 60 years. And he was an educator. He won all sorts of, I mean, the list of, just even on this list, there's a zillion awards for his work. And of course, he's famous for doing the multi-enlarger montages. And you can find YouTube videos of Yulsman showing how he creates these multi-image photographs. And what he has is anywhere from 4 to 16 identical enlargers, all Besslers, if I remember correctly. And he would just go take one sheet of paper. He would have all the different negatives in different parts in each of the enlargers, and he would just go from easel to easel with a piece of paper until he was satisfied that the image had worked, developed, and there you are. But how anybody could do that is beyond my reckoning at this point. The one thing that the only sort of unusual thing that he took on, in my view, or from what I've read, is this. The image is in fact untitled, but its casual name is Ode to the Daguerreotype. So in 1969, he created an edition of daguerreotypes. They were different sizes. I have a quarter plate, and they were all done on aluminum. They had a layer of silver and a layer of sensitizer. And then I have to believe that he was not trying to take pictures like that with his elaborate sort of tableaus, but rather with a set of negatives and direct contact with the silver plates. The images are really, this one is a particularly beautiful one, and this is a larger version of one that I have, and I'm really struck by how seamless the whole experience is. It just simply looks like, oh yeah, somebody left a daguerreotype case image on the lawn, and there's the house in the background. I'm going to keep this short, so I'm going to start. And Dana, if you can help me make sure I get this thing right, I'm going to try and.
Okay, if you stop sharing, there you go.
Okay. So if you can see it, let's see. I have to figure out how to see it myself. Anyway, this is the Clarence John Laughlin. There we go. I can do that. And I'm really intrigued by this because this is a print which it doesn't show very well here in this room, but it has a lovely sort of slight purplish toning to it, which I really like. And going in order. The Laughlin is the only Laughlin I've got. This one, let's see is that readable? Not very. Darn. Anyway, so this is Rene Magritte sleeping. I also have an illuminated man and another just a single image. I hope everybody has at some point takes a look at Michael's original book called Sequences, which is what kind of pushed me away from more or less routine newspaper work into some other kinds of photography in my 20s and early 30s.
I think
So
he's dreaming of the Zoom meeting because everybody's reflected in the.
You're right. He's certainly dreaming of something. And I'll put this one up close and see if that works. This is really tough. But there's the thing. It's not quite a Gem Tim type, but it's small. Does that help? Don't say anything.
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah, you can? All right, good. I can't tell from up here. That's my story. Thank you very much, people. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much, Reich. There's a message from Ken Liss who says, my dad, who did PR for Bazooka Bubblegum, provided Mike Mandel with gum that was packed with the photographer cards. And
Really?
And he has a set minus the gum.
Whoa, Ken does? All right, if you've got a full set, I'm just saying, they're valuable.
Thank you, thank you.
Thanks a lot, I'm done.
Those were beautiful. And I just want to go back real quickly. Donna sent a message to Dan about the battery on the meter, just says replace it. It is replaceable on the Necromat. So let's see. We have John Felix and Jack Billington. We're at almost 9 o'clock. John, would you like to go?
Sure. This shouldn't take long. Let me do my screen share. And this one here. Oops. Share. All right. Slideshow.
Hey, it's all right. Relax.
And let's see. Where do I get to the beginning? Well, I don't have that many slides.
John, I can talk you through it real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
Use the bar on the left side underneath the orange box. Use that bar a little lower. A little lower. And to the right.
Oh,
Yep, that bar. Yeah, drag that all the way to the top and then click on the first one. Okay, now you're on the first one. So and then you can go up to slideshow at the top if you want.
Yeah, I don't think I see that.
It's a little higher.
But what I have is I don't want to do that. I have the bar across that has all of the Zoom.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You can how about the you can move that box, John. Can you grab the box and move it, the Zoom box?
Okay, there it is. All right, then I go to slideshow.
Yep, and then you're good.
All right, move that back up. But why don't I get the
Click
option?
on slideshow again. Click on that.
Oh, there it is.
From beginning.
All right.
All the way on the left.
Yeah, got it. All right, thank you, Ben. Click again. Great, thank you. This is a photograph that I bought about 37 years ago, and it's of a sod house. And up on the Daguerrean Society website and Facebook page, somebody had posted this, and I couldn't figure out where they got it from. I think I had the original on it, but what really interests me is this woman commented on the Daguerrean Society Facebook page and says it was done by a certain photographer. So I thought I would just tell you a little bit about this photograph. Now, first of all, it had a on the back of it, it's framed. The frame was period for the, I'd say 1970s, 1980s, and this is on it, and it says, now let me read it. In the end, the West was won with a bleak absence of drama by a homesteader and his woman, the mother of the first generation raised on the plains. They introduced a new and stable element, the family. And they began a raw life with very raw materials. There were no trees on the prairie, so their houses were built of dry sod, whimsically known as prairie marble. And for a few, they used the dung of buffalo. Doctors were scarce, and there was much sickness, and many widowers. And many otherwise healthy women went mad from the scrimping, the droughts, the burning summer, and the polar winters, the loneliness and ceaseless wind. Now, that's on the back of this, of the picture that I have, and on the frame, I should say. And what I noticed on this is that it's in quotation marks. And I don't know why, because there may be, it is typewritten on a piece of paper, and I'm wondering if I were to take the frame apart, it's all sealed, I haven't done that yet, if the author of that quote is actually there. Now, I got this picture at actually an auction, the James P. Hopkins auction that occurred in 1985. Now, this auction was significant to PHSNE. It was a Skinner auction here in Massachusetts. And it was the collection of that fellow on the left, Dr. Hopkins. Jack Naylor knew him from his collection, I think, of mostly Kodak things. And he convinced Dr. Hopkins that rather than selling his collection, which he wanted to do, he says, why don't you give it to PHSNE, donate to PHSNE. And of course, Jack had done his research, and he says you could probably make just as much money, if not more, by writing it off on taxes. So that's what he did. And that's why I picked this photograph up. Now, when that was posted on the Daguerrean Society Facebook page, a woman said, commented, says, oh yeah, that's probably, no, she said it's a photograph by by Solomon D. Butcher. And I, of course, had never heard of him, but I looked him up, and it turns out that he was from Nebraska. And he tried his hand in farming and was not too successful, didn't like it. So he started going around taking photographs of sod houses. And it's really interesting. If you look at them, they seem quite proud. And I only have a couple, but he has many, but I'm only showing a couple. But it looks like they use they use it as an opportunity to show off what they have in the houses. It looks like on the photograph on the left, everything that was in the house got moved to the outside. And there's a photograph of what a sod house looks like on the inside. There's another one there. I think everything they own is probably out in the photograph. This is all from a book that he published. And he noted in this one, which I thought was kind of interesting. If you read the caption, it says, well, first of all, it's the Hamilton estate. And it says, Mrs. Hamilton was so embarrassed by her sod house, she refused to be photographed in front of it. She insisted the pump organ be brought outside instead. And I always thought that was kind of interesting, you know, that that you're having a photograph taken and you don't want to be in front of your sod house, but you are very proud of your pump organ, so you bring it outside. Now, the photographer Butcher, from what I understand, he worked almost entirely in Nebraska, but on the back on that piece of paper, it did mention that it was described as being a sod house in Kansas. So I very quickly went online, and it turns out he did go into Kansas. This is an auction that took place in 2014, and they had found 3 of his images that they knew were taken in Kansas. So I know he did in fact work in Kansas. There is some evidence that he also worked in Colorado and Utah also. So whether or not you can definitely attribute the photograph that I have to him, I think it's a good possibility. The other thing too is it turns out that the Nebraska State Historical Society has 35,000 of his negatives, 1,000 of which are sod houses. So unless there's somebody else going around that part of the country taking photographs of sod houses, I wouldn't be surprised if this really is one of his. And I think that's it. Oops.
Thank you, John. Those are amazing photographs. I'd never seen sod houses that, were photographed in that period. So that's really cool. And a nice sort of note about Disney's previous collections and stuff like that. So thank you. And then Jack Billington,
Thank
would
you.
you like to wrap us up?
What I'm showing is a Leica camera. And I bought this a year after PHSNE started. Claire and I knew nothing about Leicas or old cameras or folding cameras. We knew nothing about that until I happened to get a couple off a friend of mine at work. And I got interested in them. We got interested in them. Then we started going to the flea markets and picking them up. And then all of a sudden, we got a letter that there's a PHSNE. And we went to the first meeting and we joined at the first meeting. And we had perfect attendance for 15 years after that, except for one meeting. I was shooting a wedding that day. But anyway, we went to a small flea market near our house one Sunday morning. This was after we had been in PHSNE for a while. And everybody at PHSNE was talking about Leica cameras. And I didn't know what a Leica camera was. I hadn't seen one before that. And this camera here was sitting on a table, a card table, that a guy was sitting at, and he only had about a dozen things on it that he was selling. And I says, "Can I take a look at your camera?" And he says, "Sure." And he handed it to me. He says, "That's a Leica." I said, "Oh, it is. How do you know?" He says, "Well, if you look right here on the camera, you can see the name. It says Lights on it." So I looked on it and you can just about make it out. And it looks like somebody rubbed it out, to tell you the truth. Anyway, I looked it over, and the first time I had this thing in my hand, I got Leicaritis. Anybody that's picked up a Leica knows that one of these Leicas, when you pick them up, they just feel wonderful in your hands if you're a photographer. So I said, "What do you want for it?" He says, $12. I said, "Whoa." I said, "We usually get cameras like this in this flea market for about $2 a piece." And he says, "No, that's a Leica. That was my father's. I got to get $12. So there was another guy standing there waiting to get his hands on it. And I had never paid that much for camera, a used camera. But I hadn't bought anything that morning. I'd been to 2 other flea markets. So I says, "Okay, I'll take it." So I gave him the $12. Well, they brought it up to PHSNE, and I brought it up to the meeting. Nobody knew anything about it. Even somebody like Matt Eisenberg, who had about 1,000 of these things in bureau drawers, did not know anything about this camera. The unique part about it is there's no serial number on it. And the other thing is, on the viewfinder, on the side here, it's got a strange inscription. It reads Lutz, L-U-T-Z, Ferrando, F-E-R-R-A-N-D-O, and Pi, C-I-E, and then Lida, L-T-D-A. And down below that, it says Rio de Janeiro. Well, I had it for quite a while. I asked quite a few people about it. Nobody could give me any information. So about a year or so ago, the Photographic Historical Society of Great Britain was having a Zoom like this, and the subject of the Zoom was Leica, is it or ain't it? So there were several different kinds of Leicas there. In the meantime, I looked this up again. I looked this inscription up again on, what do you call that? On the internet. And I found out that this company back in 1925 bought 30 Leicas from Leitz in Germany. And when they got them, they disfigured them. They did something different to them all. Some of them, they made Leica Lexus out of them by covering them with gold. Others they covered with silver. So I said, oh boy, I got one covered with silver. Because if you look at a regular Leica, you can see the difference in the finish on them. One is duller than the other one. This one here has been polished so much that it's all rounded off up here. So I took this down to a guy I know that works at an antique center, and he checked it with acid to see if this was silver on here. I thought I had a real winner here. And as it turned out, he says it's not silver. He says, I think it's chrome. So what they must have done was took this all apart and chrome plated it. And then the company, Lutz Ferrando, sold it way back in 1925. Well, not too long after that, there was a piece on the internet that I read, and they wanted $2,500 for it. I said, wow, that's pretty good. So I put this in a Zoom like I'm doing here in Great Britain, and William Fagan, who was a Leica expert in Great Britain, said to me, he says, you got a good one, Jack. I says, what is it worth? He says around 2. So I don't want to sell it. I wouldn't part with it. I think it's a great thing. I've had it for a long time. And this was the start of my Leica collection. Over the years, I managed to amass a grand total of 5 Leicas. And this is one of the other ones. This is a number 2. This is a number 1A. And that's my story.
Jack, thank you. Sid wants to know what lens is on the body.
Okay. So that. I got it right here. When I'm finished, okay? Okay. The lens is an Elmar. It's 1.3.5 and an f equals 50 millimeter. I took one time, Claire and I was on the board. I had finished being president and I was on the board, and she was a director, not a director, the treasurer. And the person that was doing photo nostalgia is what we used to call snapshot back in those days. Quit, all of a sudden, bing, gone. And nobody was there to put out an issue for the next month. And they asked at the meeting if anybody wanted to do photo nostalgia, and everybody sat on their hands. Nobody put any up. So Claire and I says we had had experience with a little newspaper like that once. So we said, we'll do it for 4 weeks. And by then you should be able to get somebody else. So by being on the board, on the Photo Nostalgia, we had show and tell at all the meetings where you could bring something and show it like we're doing here. So I photographed the 4 meetings with this camera by available light. And we put them in the Photo Nostalgia magazine for those 4 months. So we kept PHSNE going for them 4 months. After that, we went back to the board and we said, there's a lot of work doing this. You should pay the person that's doing it. So they decided they'd pay $50. So when they said that, all the hands went up. So they kept Photo Nostalgia going until now, and now it's snapshots.
Now, what's your question?
Now, the question I'd like to ask you, Dana, if I may, people put pictures on here. Do you have to have the program Word in order to do that? Or can you do it with any other thing that you use?
Ben is more of an expert, but any image you have on your screen, you can hit share screen on Zoom and your computer screen will appear. You just have to choose which window. Is that right, Ben?
Yes, or it could show the whole entire computer. So whatever you prefer.
Yeah. So
You have
it's,
something to share, Jack?
Say that again, please.
Do you have something to share?
Well, not now, no, but you know, I could share things, and I didn't know how to put a picture on, like the gentleman said there. They didn't show me that at school either, but we didn't even have computers.
I'm glad I'm not alone, Jack.
Zoom can be challenging. There's always something that
So if you go
could
to
go awry.
share screen, you can put a picture on if it's in where?
If it's on your computer screen, if you're looking at it and then you hit share screen and you're on Zoom, it will show up.
All right, I'm going to try that the next time.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. It was really good to hear all of that, and especially about snapshots, because Bonnie is doing an amazing job keeping that going, and every issue is really packed, and I really appreciate that. In fact, here is December. And I just wanted to say it's been so good to hear everyone share tonight, because it has that feeling of being at a live meeting where we're all sort of trading stories and swapping things. And holiday parties, I hope, will come back sometime where we can all get together, but it's also nice to have people from all over join us. And I really appreciate everyone being here. And before we wrap it up, I just want to say that our meeting in January, what we're planning is sort of a retrospective of PHSNE and a look toward the future. So there'll be several presenters on different parts of the organization, different parts of the history, and we'll talk about what we're looking forward to. And so that will be the content of the next meeting. Keep your eyes peeled for that. And for future presentations coming up in 2023, which I can't believe it almost is. And there's a bit of chat going on about the battery for Dan. So Dan, I see that you see that. So thank you, Donna. And I'd just like for everyone to unmute and give yourselves a round of applause and wish each other happy holidays, because this has been really wonderful. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Dana. Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to everybody.
Take care.
Dana, you deserve.
Happy holidays.
I can't even name all the things that you deserve. Cheers. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you.
It's a
Very
lot of
fun.
fun. So next time when we do the retrospective, we'll try and leave some room for various people to present. So there'll be several facets of it. But if you have anything you'd like to share as a member that you think we could put in the chat or that people would like to hear, you know, save it for the questions at the end, and we'll capture some of that as well. That would be great. And so for tonight, I think that's a wrap. Thank you, Ben, as always. Ben, you're
Likewise, thanks
amazing.
everyone.
We couldn't
Thanks,
do it
Steve.
without you.
Here.
Yeah.
And I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday.
Good
Thank
luck,
you.
2023. All right.
See you next
Bye.
year. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you again.